So I'm here today with John at one of his latest developments. John, tell us a little about yourself and your track record in property.
Yeah, sure. Hi Richard, good to see you again. Yeah, as you know, I'm trained as a chartered quantity surveyor originally. Started buying little flats around Manchester where I was living at the time, and I've been an investor since then. That was in my mid-20s. Coming up to sort of 14 years now. So,
Right.
Initially just passively, but I've sort of moved that model forward of the business that I've got, which was initially just buying and selling single units we do lettings in the Birmingham area to local residential
Right.
market.
Yes.
We broker some deals as well, and then my investment activities, which have grown beyond my own portfolio, are now in larger scale developments like this.
Mm-hmm. And just again, we're inside one of a number of houses in a terrace block. They're all 4-bedroom houses, I believe.
They are, yes. I mean, this is one of 7 4-bedroom units with 2 bathrooms, which is part of this development of 7 houses and 16 apartments.
Right. Yeah.
So there's 23 units here altogether, and this was a partly complete development which we picked up from a receiver.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. So we'll be looking outside at the development, also at some of the individual apartments as well. You mentioned that you purchased this from the receiver. Can you just describe that process, how that occurred in terms of the history of the site?
Yeah, sure. This development I've purchased with a private investor who I'm working with under a joint venture.
Right.
We bought this development directly from GVA Grimley, the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
It was partly complete. They put it out to the market. I had to do some, I guess, being the technical guy out of the team, some quite extensive due diligence on this partly completed development. Sort of looking at the warranties, trying to find the design team. That was all before we submitted a best and final offer,
Mm-hmm.
and we managed to win the site.
Right. And how long did that process take, and where are we now in terms of the timescale from when you first started looking and where we are now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the due diligence in itself, I had a tight window of opportunity to get as much information of, I'd call it a jigsaw.
Yes.
Because it was partly complete, so I had to put the pieces together, understand, what warranties were in place from the structural engineer, how far the guarantee had progressed, which was Premier guarantee.
Right.
So went to Premier, sort of, tried to sort of understand how far they'd certified the build,
Mm-hmm.
given the fact that it was partly complete.
Yep.
Again, with the architect, I sort of had to go over the planning application and the consent, look at the conditions which were associated with the consent, which ones had been discharged, which ones were still to be discharged,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously put a financial weighting against some of those items which we had to do and factor that into the appraisal.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I had a tight window to do that, sort of a graph for about 3 or 4 days, quite intensely. And then I reported that back with my partner. We took a view on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had to sort of submit the offer, and we got it, I guess, within about sort of 2 weeks of
Right.
being informed that the opportunity was available.
Sure.
So then immediately, that was sort of from there, when we completed, we decided to phase it in 2 stages.
Mm-hmm.
The first phase was to complete the houses, get the warranties in position, and then get the building regulations, get the planning signed off, set up the tenure of the properties with the solicitors.
Yep.
Because obviously this is part of the apartment block.
Yes.
And 7 houses.
Mm.
They've got shared communal areas, so there is a small service charge which we had to factor in
Right.
across every resident.
Uh-huh.
So we had to think forward on how we were going to do that prior to sort of completing these houses.
Right. And they're all now sold?
Yeah, the houses, then we finished them, got everything that we needed in order, put them on the market. Initially had a bit of a sort of slow progress possibly because of where we priced them,
Mm-hmm.
being guided by the agent, I will
Yep.
say. I dropped the prices to the stamp duty level and they just flew out.
Mm-hmm.
So we sold these and then
For what price, John?
stamp duty 125,000, which
Right.
I feel is absolutely exceptional value for
Yes.
the buyers. So
Yep.
4-bed houses just outside Birmingham,
Mm-hmm.
M6 Junction 10,
Mm-hmm.
125 grand for a 4-bed, 2 bathrooms, and they're all sort of occupied by the residents.
Yes.
Yeah, no investors. So
Right.
they're all quite house proud,
Owner
occupiers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've swithed to sort of rolling onto the apartment block, which you're aware.
Yeah. So the first stage of the development and obviously Raiye's was to finish off whatever works were needed within each of the houses.
That's right. Yes.
Mhm.
So we did inherit a few problems with soak away provision
Mm-hmm.
not being to a standard acceptable to the building regs officer. He essentially hadn't signed that off
Right.
from the previous developer.
And I assume that this was a sort of post-credit crunch sort of issue with the developer going bust.
Yes, it was very much that a
Mhm.
case of that. I'd imagine Royal Bank of Scotland, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
overstretched at a certain point in the boom of the market. And then as credit froze in the financial markets, banks were calling in cash, and obviously because they've got the covenant in their
Yeah.
commercial loan agreements, they can call a loan in at any time. And unfortunately, the team that own this were in that position where they where it was pulled in.
Yeah. Sadly, not an unusual situation 6 or 7 years ago for a lot of developers.
No, as you know, up and down the country, a lot of city centre sort of apartment blocks
Yeah.
were sort of half baked and
Yeah.
plugs were pulled.
Thankfully, we've moved on. Confidence has come back,
Yes.
and the fact that you've managed to sell pretty much pretty quickly, from what you're saying, the completed houses in this block, and now you've moved on to finishing off the apartment.
Yes.
So I think you said there were how many?
16 apartments.
Right, and what sort of condition were they in when you inherited the purchase?
Yeah, so the apartment block was, it was just an envelope essentially. So, the walls were up, roof was on, it was watertight, windows were in,
Right.
and then just floors were down. I mean, when I say the floors, they weren't done to the acoustic sort of finish level. We've had to complete the flooring as well. And then that was about it really. We had a shell and a canvas, although the sort of partitionings layouts were in and already in place. We then had to sort of finish everything off. So insulation, boarding,
Yes.
all the services,
Yep.
complete fit out.
And that's obviously still being finished off at this moment.
It is, yeah, as you've just seen.
Yeah.
We've nearly completed the first 6, and then the remaining 10, nearly coming close to finishing the first 4 of those. And
Right.
then
And roughly, when do you hope to be off site?
next sort of couple of months,
Okay.
we'll be done.
And you're at this stage owner occupiers, or are you looking perhaps?
Well, I mean, I would like to get a mix of owner occupiers. Just, we would like to just simply because a bit of a mix would be just nice to sell on to.
Yeah, sure.
But we are speaking to some of the the national companies that sell to investors, and we've had very, very positive feedback given the pricing level and the yield and the quality of the finish that we're going for has been sort of merited and credited quite
Just
quite
again,
favourably.
you mentioned that the 4-bedroom houses for 125,000, which are now all sold, and they're 2-bedroom apartments, aren't they?
They are.
They're all 2 bedrooms. Roughly what sort of pricing and what sort of rental? You mentioned yield. Just the summary of numbers. What would that
I
be?
mean, we're going from 80 to 84,500.
Right.
So
Okay.
80,000 to 84,500 with a rent roll of about 500. Some are quoting 525, even 550 for some of the larger 2-bed, 2-bathroom type apartments that we've done.
So sort of 7 to 8% gross.
Yeah,
Yield,
that's right. With a reasonable service charge, about £500-600 a year.
All right. So nothing kind of
No, it's not going to dent anybody's yield too seriously. So, Yeah, so which is quite good,
Oh,
and
excellent.
that fits within our appraisal.
Hmm.
That's what we priced them at
Yes.
before we purchased the site,
Okay.
and our construction budget seems to be going the way we needed it to.